Hello and welcome to today's office hours presentation. This is Paul Hoyt. Our office hours presentation is a relaxed, informal mentoring program we hold every Monday at noon Pacific time. All the recording slides and exercises are archived in our members area, and all the recordings are also available on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt, at least for the time being. We're getting a lot of advice for people to say, hey, take those free recordings down, that what you have up there with 100 hours worth of training and education videos is far too valuable to be just giving away to people, free, as you can. But we are starting to see a little bit of traction there. We're starting to see a couple of leads coming in through the YouTube channel. So we're still in the process of deciding what we're going to do. The reasons we do the office hours presentations is that we know that being a successful small business owner can be a great experience, but we also know that it's tough. You need education, training, tools, and team to be successful, and we want you to get to know us, because when you get to know us, you'll know that first and most importantly, we care about you. We want you to be successful in every area of your life, whatever that means to you. We want you to find the greatness, the happiness, and the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every single day as we try to do. Our passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America. And our vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth while enjoying greater harmony and balance in their lives. If you find these office hours presentations beneficial to you, then please pass the word. Please pass the contact information along, the website information along, the YouTube channel along, to people who you know who are also starting and growing a business, or just thinking about starting and growing a business, because we want to help. Our office hours agenda is usually an in-depth discussion of a business success principle, then closing remarks, special offers, and an invitation for next week's session, and then open Q&A and coaching. However, today it's all Q&A and coaching, so get ready with your questions and with your discussion topics, because the next hour belongs to you. We can talk about anything that you want to talk about. I encourage you to join us as well in the Awakened CEO communities on both LinkedIn and Facebook, where I publish a business success principle of the day, 4 nights a week, about 10 o'clock or so my time. And we do an energy of the day posting every single day on Facebook, and have for the last 2.5 years. Today's topic, as I mentioned, is open Q&A and group coaching. We always relate the subject matter of the day back to the key performance areas of success, and this one is about anything and everything. So you're welcome to ask questions on leadership, on marketing, on sales, on financial management, or any of the other departments or functions at your business, and we'll do our best to provide guidance and advice as we can. We also relate the subject matter of the day to one or more of the levels of performance that we defined in the Awakened CEO system. We talk about how important it is for you to focus on your mindset, your beliefs, your perspectives, your attitudes, your methods, which are the plans, processes, and procedures, and on developing and gaining momentum. And of course, today's call can be about any one of those things. So if you have a mindset issue to talk about, a planning, a preparation, processes issue, a methods issue, or conversations, and want to talk a little bit about establishing momentum and building momentum, we are happy to do that. I want to review a couple of previous office hours presentations before we get into today's conversation, because it might just stimulate some questions that you had left over from the office hours presentations that we did in between the last group coaching session and this one. And there were a couple of them, and a quarterly planning workshop. Office hours 111 was on change or die. Office hours number 112 was on how to define and manage your company culture. And then just this last Saturday, we did a quarterly planning event, a free 4-hour workshop that we did this Saturday, March the 19th. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these to remind you what the main subject matter was. First of all, in office hours number 111, Change or Die, we talked about the author, Alan Deutschman, the problem, what doesn't work today whenever somebody's faced with an issue about where they really have to change their behaviors or face is some sort of extremely nasty consequence, even life-threatening issues and addictions that they have. Then we talked about the 3 keys to change, applying the keys in your business, and summed it up to the bottom line. The most stunning part about this presentation and about the book Change or Die is that the overwhelming majority of people do not change their lifestyle, do not change their behaviors, even when people with great credibility and in positions of authority tell them that they need to change it or they're going to die. You know, people who are losing weight, people who are smoking cigarettes, people who are drinking too much, people who are, you know, committing crimes and going to prison. Generally speaking, the change rate, the success rate for somebody to have a turnaround is really low. How low? Only 10% of people who are faced with life-threatening behaviors actually make the change. That's stunning to me, but it really talks about the power of our habitual mind and the fragility of our habitual mind as well. We as human beings are amazingly strong and wonderful people, but we are also amazingly fragile when it comes to building habits and, you know, initiating and then continuing behaviors that simply don't serve us at all. Some of the things that work really well whenever we don't, when we have a non-life-threatening behavior are things like facts, fears, and force. Sometimes if a person is not heavily addicted to a particular activity, we can just lay the facts on them and they'll change. Or we can use a little bit of fear and say, you know, hey, if you don't buy this life insurance policy, for example, you know, your entire family might be poverty-stricken when you pass away, and that will get them to change behavior. And sometimes we can just force them to do something and say, do this or else, and it will change their threatening behavior. But if it's really, really firmly in their subconscious mind and in their habitual mind, facts, fear, and force doesn't work. What does work is to have a bonding relationship with somebody, to relate with somebody who really cares about them, who will help them feel safe in who they are and in making changes in their lifestyle. And then we begin to make very little changes and repeat them over time. And then we get them to reframe their own personal life story from someone who, you know, I've always been a smoker, or I've always drank and I'm not going to change, to somebody who humbly admits that they made a bad decision, but proudly proclaims that they got their act together and they made that lifestyle change that really is going to help them in their business. So if you are someone, or you know someone who is engaging in life-threatening behaviors, I strongly recommend that you listen to Office Hours number 111 so you can learn a lot more about the key concepts in this book, and then read the book too. Office Hours 112 was on defining and managing your company culture. We talked about the importance of company culture, defined what a company culture is, and then gave tips and techniques on how to define and manage the company culture. So the company culture is a lot of different things. It's your vision, your values, and your beliefs. It's the work schedules that you have with your employees and contractors. It's the business processes, whether formal or informal, that you have at your company. It's your dress code. It's the way that you run meetings. It's performance management, you know, how you honor people who are doing well, and how you try to correct behaviors that are not serving the company well. It's your compensation and benefits package and your conflict management issues. And it's all about your energy signature. You know, every person has what I call a personal energy signature. You know, it is the way that they relate to other people, the way that they appear, the way that they show up, the way that they talk to other people, the clothes that they wear, etc. And likewise, every company has their own energy signature as well. Some of them are fun-loving and carefree and high energy. Other ones are really very serious all the time, where people run around with scowls on their face. Other ones are very, very competitive and, you know, difficult to be in. And, you know, the type of energy that your company has will attract people who are, for some reason, attracted to that energy. If you have a company that's, fast-paced, fun-loving, we all get along, we collaborate, we kid each other, we give each other practical jokes, you'll attract people like that. If your company is very serious, we're like a law firm or even an accounting firm in some ways, or a business consultant. I think any firm can be a very serious firm. You'll attract people who feel safest when they're at companies who are being very, very serious in what they do. So this entire office hours presentation was about helping you understand what your company culture is and giving you tips and techniques on managing your company culture so that you can attract the type of people to your business that you want to attract, and that you can learn how to manage that and change it over time. Last Saturday, we did a quarterly planning event where we talked about the outcomes of the event, which were to really help people get grounded in the core concepts and critical concepts of business. And then we talked about, our other outcomes were to help people make a great plan for Q2. Unlike office hours presentations we do in the past, 111 and 112 that we just talked about, this particular quarterly planning event was not recorded because we really like our quarterly planning events to be very intimate and very personal, where people feel very safe in saying whatever they want to say, knowing that it's not going to be recorded and it's not going to be posted on YouTube anywhere. I do want to remind you, however, of some of the critical concepts that we talked about in the quarterly planning event, because you may want to ask a question or offer up a discussion topic based on one of those. First, we talked about the levels of performance that we just talked about a few minutes ago, about mindset, methods, and momentum, and gave a lot of detail on that. We talked about the 3 areas of expansion and how important it is for a business owner to not only focus on business growth, but also focus on professional growth and personal growth. We talked about the Awakened CEO growth process, our trademarked process, a 5-step process for defining what it is that you want to accomplish, and then accomplishment. First, you start with the vision, and then you understand where you are. You understand what point A is and what point B is, so you can draw a line between point A and point B and develop the step-by-step plan to get there. Then gather your resources and then execute the plan, and how important execution is. You can have a great idea, you can know exactly where you are, you can have a great plan, you can even have the resources necessary to execute that plan, but if you don't take action step by step, day after day, in a repeated, diligent, determined method, you're not going to get what it is that you want to get. We talked about the classes of business. The classes of business being startup mode, steady growth mode, rapid expansion mode, turnaround mode, and exit mode, and how important it was for you as a CEO and an entrepreneur to understand what the modes of business were. And we also talked about the key performance areas, which we do talk about a lot. That's kind of the bully pulpit, my basic platform that I talk about, and that is, for you as a CEO and an entrepreneur, you at least have to be competent in all of the areas of business. If you are incompetent in operations administration and financial management, in developing and launching new products, in marketing especially, you really don't have much of a chance of being successful in business. We also talk about the 3 most important key performance areas, which are leadership, making sure that you're building a great team, that you're defining your strategies and plans, that you have a great business model, that you show up every day with a winning mindset, that you take 100% responsibility for everything that's going on at your business, etc., and sales and delivery. So you can be strong in marketing, product development, operations, and financial management and still have a pretty bad business, because you really have to be strong at sales, and you have to be strong at delivering a quality service and delivering a quality product, or you won't stay in business no matter how strong you are in any of the other key performance areas of business. So with that reminder of Office Hours 111 on Change or Die, and that reminder of Office Hours 112 on defining and managing your company culture, and the reminder on some of the core concepts, the critical concepts that we reviewed on last Saturday's quarterly planning workshop. Let's open it up for questions, comments and questions on any topic that you choose. And of course, if you want us to focus on a topic for a future office hours presentation, you can go to prowlsurvey.com. Not necessarily today because we don't have time to monitor that URL today. If you have a question for us or a discussion topic today, then please by all means type them into the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar chat log, and we'll begin to address those. Stephanie, do we have any email questions that came in, or do we have any new questions from folks who are attending live today?
Okay, let's get going with the hi, Ricardo. Ricardo saying hi, Paul, to us, so I just wanted to say hi back.
Hello.
First question.
Okay.
I think I have an opportunity to expand my business a lot. What are the key factors should I consider in exploring this possibility?
I think that, first of all, congratulations. You know, if you have an opportunity to expand your business a lot, that kind of implies that you're running a successful business. Not necessarily, because some people, you know, for whatever reason, they don't have a profitable business at a small scale, but they see the opportunity to turn that non-profitable or, you know, just barely getting by business into a thriving enterprise by turning it into something much larger. But I'm going to assume for a second that, you know, things are going well, that your opportunity for expansion is because things are going well and, you know, additional leads and referrals are starting to go your way. So there's a big difference in between being in steady growth mode to expand your business a lot and rapid expansion mode to expand your business a lot. In steady growth mode, I count that as, you know, 10, 20, maybe even 30% growth year over year. So we did, you know, $500,000 this year, and we expect to be $650,000 next year. That's a lot of money, you know, to be pushing into the business, but that's a 30% growth. Even 30% or 40% growth sustained over a long period of time can cause you a lot of problems. I remember being associated with a company called Data Point in the early 1980s, that their pride and joy, their claim to fame was that for something like 10 years or 40 successive quarters that they had, you know, 40% growth year over year. But eventually trying to maintain that growth rate really got to them, and then they sank under the weight of that expectation. And in a particular case, they were demanding so much that their salespeople reach those revenue goals, that, you know, 40% more this year than you sold last year, that they started engaging in some very questionable business practices. And it was those questionable business practices to try to maintain that growth rate that really caused them some problems and caused their eventual demise, when they had a really great technology in the early 1980s. So generally, even 30 or 40% trying to maintain that growth rate year after year after year will cause you a lot of problems, but not near as much as being in rapid expansion mode. So rapid expansion mode means that we're doubling or tripling or quadrupling, you know, every single year. And I'm blessed to have a client who's in that rapid expansion mode right now, and a few other clients that really see the opportunity for tremendous expansion in a variety of different ways. So maybe that's, you know, tip number 2 there, is there are a lot of different ways to expand. You can expand through just, you know, selling more of your current products and services to your current marketplace. You can expand by introducing new products and services to your current customer base. You can expand by taking your current products and services to brand new markets. And so you have to look at all the different ways of expanding. Each one of them has their interesting features, and in some cases their interesting challenges as well. So I trust that because you think that you have an opportunity to expand, that you kind of already know what your expansion opportunity with. And I'll leave it with just saying that when you're in rapid expansion mode, everything is broke. I generally have this rule of thumb that says that if your business is operating smoothly today, you can scale it up a matter of 15, 20, maybe 25% before something just doesn't work anymore. You can always push down and go a little faster with existing systems that work well. Almost always you can scale the business 25% and you can keep doing things the way that you're doing it. A little more than that and things start to break, where the computer system that you are using no longer serves your need. People are not able to step up to increased levels of responsibility and need to be replaced. Your personal time, you're already working 80 hours a week, and it just isn't feasible for you to work 100 hours a week or more over a prolonged period of time to sustain that level of activity, etc. So every system has its limits, and the more pressure that you put on the system to grow it rapidly, the more likely that some of those components of the system will break down. And you never know which component, well, you can tell which components are going to break down by doing some analysis. And frankly, I do that for people all the time in scalability analysis work, is we do take a look at their systems, their marketing systems, their sales systems, their delivery systems, their suppliers, and really evaluate what their expansion risk is by looking at all of the different components to the system and finding out which ones of them are most likely to be the bottlenecks to growth, and then fixing it. And that, by the way, is the way that you expand, is that you identify bottlenecks, you fix a bottleneck, and then you move on to the next bottleneck, and you move on to the next bottleneck, and go forward. So congratulations on having a business that is expandable. You have a lot of different options to expand your business. And unfortunately, every system has its scalability issues. So you may want to hire somebody to take a look at your system from top to bottom and determine which ones of those business processes, which ones of those components are most likely to fail with the increased workload, so that you can, address it in a little bit of an analytical way, and maybe see some of those problems coming before they actually hit you, and be able to take action before it really starts to be something that limits your growth and causes you all kinds of heartburn and nightmares and sleepless nights and that sort of stuff. Hopefully that was helpful to you, and again, congratulations. We're happy to do whatever we can to facilitate your expansion. Stephanie, any other comments or next question?
Just a couple of comments. One thing that you and I have chatted about many, many times is when, and we've seen our clients, some of them do this successfully and some not so much, but when we are looking at our business and considering areas for expansion or upgrades or changes or doing something different, whatever that is, one of the core things that Paul and I talk about all the time is let's make sure that we ask our target market. Let's check in with our target market. Let's find out, what the heck does our target market think about this? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that so many individuals and entrepreneurs tend to forget, is we get so excited and our passion starts going and we really get into something and we're convinced that this is the right thing to do. And in fact, when you check in with your target market, it's not the right thing to do. So that's just something that I just want to put out there again, because you and I have talked about it so many times that you've really drilled it in my head now.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Sometimes we think that sometimes we know that we have an expansion opportunity because the market is demanding more and more and more of our stuff. And sometimes we just think we have an expansion opportunity, but we haven't really, had the verification of that from our target market. Good, nice comment. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Next question.
Next question. I need services but can't afford them. What are my options?
I work with a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs that are underfunded for what they really need. They realize, after working with us and after listening to some of these, that they need, team members, that they need all kinds of different things that they can't particularly afford. And one of my, my most popular office hours presentation of all time was like number 2 or 3 that I did called, said what to do if you have no money. So, and it does offer a lot of guidance. I encourage you to listen to that if if you haven't done so already. But generally, I would ask those people who you need to have on your team whether or not they have any flexibility, because oftentimes they will have some flexibility in the way that they demand compensation from you. For example, here in Silicon Valley, if you have what people consider to be a decent opportunity, you may find law firms who will work with you on a deferred basis. They may take their $30,000 fee, their $50,000 fee, their $100,000 fee, and defer part of it or all of it in return for an advanced equity position at the company. So for example, here oftentimes we see law firms do those $50,000 worth of services in return for knowing that when you get your first round of funding that those services will be paid, and that they also take warrants, which are, by the way, options for purchasing shares in a company, stock in a company, when the person is not a director, an officer, or an employee of the company or a contractor of the company. So typically law firms will take warrants so that they have the option then of, if you do get funded and if the venture really takes off, they may be able to really hit a home run by purchasing $150,000 shares at 10 cents on the dollar or 5 cents on the dollar, and then cashing in on that either long-term as an investor to the company or selling those shares on the second market. So there are people that defer their entire fees in return for some bonuses down the road. I had one of my early mentors, David Mead with Mead Consulting Group out of Denver, Colorado, had a particular system that I was fond of. He called it a gain sharing agreement. So he would defer half his fees to companies that he knew that he could help in return for a nice percentage of the gain at the company, the gain in the asset value of the company. So if we could agree right now that your business was worth $5 million and we work with you for a year or two, then part of our agreement might be that we get 10% or 15% or 20% in the gain in the value of the business over time. And then, at the particular point in time, we would have the business valued again by a formula that we had agreed upon in the beginning, and our compensation would be based upon that increase in value. Or if you sold the business, then it would be based on, the asset value of the business relative to the value that it had when we began the consulting agreement. I appreciated that. It's typical for people to offer installment programs. So we have a $10,000 one-year coaching package, but you can pay for it up front, and you get, for $10,000, you get 2 months free, or you can pay for it, every quarter, or you can pay for it, on a monthly basis. So installment payments is another way of making sure that you're leveraging your existing cash and paying for services more as you consume them, as opposed to all up front. And in some cases, some very limited cases, I've seen consultants and contractors defer a portion of their fee structure for an equity position in the company. And classic is that, we'll instead of our normal fee of $500 an hour, we'll only charge you $250 an hour, and that $250 difference will go to purchase an equity position in your company at some level of bonus. And typically that bonus is fairly substantial, like doubling. So if I've charged $500 an hour, but you're only going to pay me $250 in cash, and the other $250 is going to be converted into a $500 equity position in your company. I've seen that happen, and every once in a while we consider that with some of our more advanced clients as well, especially when we've worked with them for a while and we're really confident that they're going to take off, or they got a pretty darn good chance of taking off. We may defer some of our fees into an equity position, but generally not, by the way, for startup businesses and people that we haven't worked with before, because the risk is frankly too high. So we enjoy, working with them in a small way, you know, typically not deferring, but translating our normal fee structure into an installment payment program if that works best for them. Hopefully that was helpful to you, but you do have a lot of options. Explore your options and then just ask and see who's willing to show up with sweat equity, with deferred payments, with installment payments, with gain sharing agreements, with part equity, part cash programs, etc. There are a lot of different ways in which service providers can step up and help you today, even when you don't have the cash to pay them their full rate up front, which of course is what we really want. Any comments there, Stephanie, or next question?
We have a question that is that kind of goes off from that one. Timeline-wise, where does the business plan come into existence for a startup stage company with limited resources? Ricardo's question, if you want to unmute him.
I may in just a little bit. Let me answer that question, and then I'll unmute him, and we'll see if they'll see if I answered it appropriately and give him a chance for a follow-up or some comments on his own. So first of all, I differentiate between the process of business planning and having a business plan. So business planning is all about thinking it through. It's about that 5-step Awaken CEO growth process where we define the vision, and then we define our status, and then we create the plan to go forward. And that plan is, a strategic plan, and it is a financial plan. As part of the strategic plan, for many companies, that means that we take a look at the products and services that we're going to be offered, and we develop a product development roadmap. We have a marketing plan, a staffing plan, a facilities plan, a sales plan, a routes to market plan, a financial management plan, a customer service plan. All of the different plans are defined in the context of a strategic planning engagement typically, and usually are documented in the case of a business plan. So I'm a big fan of business planning, and I'm a big fan of writing that all down and formalizing it in terms of a business plan document, an investor grade business plan document when necessary to do so. But it's not always necessary to formalize the plan. I think it's always a good idea to do the planning, but not necessarily always a good idea or necessary to formalize that in terms of a 30 to 50 page, investor grade business plan. When it is important to do that is if you're raising capital. There are many capital communities that, essentially the first thing that people say to you is, send me your one pager. And if they like that, the next thing they may say to you is one of two things. Either I'd like to hear your pitch, or I want to see your business plan. If you don't have a business plan, you're not able to take that next step with those investors. If you are raising money via a private placement memorandum, or raising money with a Reg A offering, Reg A plus offering, or some of the new crowdfunding offerings, it's real important for you to have a business plan, a formal document, a complete document that you can hand to your securities attorney so they can create an investment document for you, a private placement memorandum, for example. So there's some cases where a business plan is almost mandatory, and that's if you are raising capital with a Reg A plus, or a private placement memorandum. And there's some cases where it's really beneficial, and that is if you're raising capital, and you find that your investment community really wants to have a business plan. And I have another place might be if you're just gaining team members or suppliers too. I've had clients in the past that wrote a business plan and formalized the plan by which they were going to grow their business, because they were seeking new team members. They wanted somebody to come in as a partner of the business, and they knew that if they had the plan well defined, that potential partner would be more likely to come in and join them in the business. Or they were looking to line up a sole supplier relationship with a very key part of their supply chain. They knew that if they had a business plan in place, they were much more likely to be able to negotiate the agreement that they wanted to negotiate. So there's a lot of reasons to do it, and a lot of timing to do that. And so I'll kind of sum up by by repeating what I said at first. There's a difference in between business planning and having a formal business plan. I think it's important for every company to do business planning because you will make better progress, make it with a lot fewer mistakes and a lot less wasted motion if you have a decent plan in place. And whether or not you formalize that in terms of a formal investor grade business plan document itself really depends on your own individual situation, where you are and what you're going to do next. Hopefully that was helpful. Ricardo, I don't know if you're able to say hello or not, but I'm going to take you off of mute and see whether or not that answered your question. Are you there?
Hey, Paul. Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
Steph, hello. Thank you for the answer. I guess it would fall into the, this comes directly as a result also of the Saturday presentation of the quarterly planning workshop, where I also, in reviewing the quarterly plans, also went into the website and reviewed the BBS worksheet. And as I look into things and consider each area of key performance, team management and teammate to assemble, I was trying to see where would this be and where would this fall into.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But I like what you have said as far as the business planning in the essence of a strategy, and then following with the business plan for capital raising.
Right. Good. Good. Well, I appreciate that, and knowing a lot about your business and where you are, you may find that as you begin to go out and talk to potential, investors and investment partners, that they really want to see a formalized plan. And especially knowing a little bit more about your business, in some of the opportunities that you are considering, having that detailed financial model, having that, here's how we expect the return to happen in year 1, year 2, and year 3 can be most helpful as well. And frankly, the bigger the opportunity, the more important it is to have a high quality plan. So for example, if you have a $5 million opportunity or a $10 million opportunity, investors are going to expect to see a really well-defined prospectus, even published with very good graphics around that opportunity, because that's simply what your competition is doing. They're getting formal, very, very well-presented opportunities, every day or every week or so, and you can't just show up with an envelope or a napkin and some pin scratches on it. You have to have a fairly formal proposal back to your investors in order for you even to be considered with that. So we can talk a lot more about when and where and what the quality needs to be for your business plans here in when we talk some more times. I'm going to put you back on mute, and I'm going to take just a second here before we get into the rest of the questions to talk a little bit more about who we are and what we do. Here at the Hoyt Management Group, we have our distinctions because we really do focus on the whole person with our Awakened CEO system. We really do focus on professional growth, business growth, and personal growth at the same time. And we do want you to get the support that you want, that you need, that you can use, and that you can afford. That's why we have such a broad portfolios of services. We recognize that not everybody has $10,000 to do on a business plan. It's not the right thing for them. So we offer a wide portfolio of services so you can get support wherever you are on your business journey. And we are a planning and execution firm with a heavy, heavy emphasis on execution. As I mentioned earlier, it's really all about the execution. Far better to have a decent plan extremely well executed than have an extremely well thought out plan that's poorly executed, because it is all about the execution. I really think that having a great vision, having a great plan, even gathering the resources is 1 or 2 or 3% of the overall effort and the solution. 97% of the time, it's showing up every day and making those phone calls, writing those emails, producing those documents, taking that trip, having those meetings, etc., and to actually get the job done. So I encourage you to think about that. We like to be not only your planning partner, but also your execution partner to do things. Oftentimes we talk about being a firm that helps you figure out how to do it yourself, a firm that does it with you, and then sometimes actually a firm that does it for you. So think about that. We'd love to talk to you about how we can be a partner in your success. Our next office hours will be next Monday, March the 28th. I haven't decided what I'm going to talk about yet, but it will be a formal presentation. Let me know what topics that you'd be interested in addressing or for us to address at paulsurvey.com. And you can always contact me at paul@paulhoyt.com. Call or text the telephone number that's on your screen, or go to schedulepaul.com and pick a time for a meeting if you like. With that, let's open it back up to questions and discussion topics. Stephanie, what do we have?
I like this one.
Okay.
How do I give feedback in a way that someone will accept it?
I love that question, because some people are really open to being coachable. They're very flexible. They're very grounded. They have a very strong sense of self-confidence. They're very mature. And if you walk up to them and say, hey, dude, you ought to think about this, they will accept it readily because they're not a frightened person. Other people are very sensitive, and they can be triggered very easily. And for somebody to suggest to them that they could do something different and better scares the crap out of them, and they resist it. They're very, very resistant to any sort of criticism. They may think that they're open to criticism or constructive ideas, but you can tell when you're having the conversations with them that they're defensive, that they're hesitant, that they're very resistant to think about doing anything differently. So the best way to deal with somebody who you think might be resistant, they might be hesitant to change, they might somehow be offended, well, actually, I'm going to give you two ways. One way is to make it all about you, to say that, hey, I'm uncomfortable about this. I'm really kind of concerned about this over here, and I wonder if you could help me out by changing this in just a little bit of a way, or, could you do this thing for me? And I call that my UCD or my UCR system, which says that I'm uncomfortable about this, I'm concerned about that, and this is my request, or this is what I've decided to do. Because that puts it on you, which really lowers their propensity to be defensive. Because if you put it on you, their instinct may be to actually be helpful and to honor your request in some way and to help you out by considering the way that they change things. So that's one way to flip it, so that it's not about them, it's not about you coming in and telling them, hey, you got to change this, you got to do that, which may cause them to be defensive, but it's about you taking personal responsibility for the request, and it really does help, really help takes the fire out of people when you do that. The other way to do it is to let it be their idea by asking them questions. For example, and this is an analogy I use a lot, there's the direct and the indirect approach to giving people guidance. One, if you notice that somebody has their shoes untied and they might trip and fall on that, you might come up and say, hey, dude, your shoe's untied. Assuming that somebody will notice that and figure out what to do. A little softer approach might be, hey, dude, your shoe's untied, and I'd hate for you to trip and fall over that. That's softened it just a little bit. But an indirect approach might be, and this is really stretching the example a little bit, but might be of, wow, have you ever considered, how dangerous it might be to walk around with having shoes untied? I'd hate to see anything happen to you if you ever were to notice at some point in time that your shoes were untied. And that's a pretty terrible example, I gathered it. But sometimes we can ask people questions about, for example, somebody is just not putting forth the effort to raise capital. And you may ask the question that says, hey, I wonder what would happen if you focused 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day on raising capital. I wonder what would happen if you set a goal for yourself that said that I'm going to make 100 presentations to people over the course of the next 90 days. I wonder if your results would be any better than they are today. Or, you know, I wonder what would happen if you got somebody on your team that, you know, had more experience with this type of company. Because as I look at your team here, you've got people who are well-meaning and they're really, you know, focused on helping you grow the business, but I don't see anybody on your team right now that, you know, has experience in your industry. Do you think that you might have better success in raising capital? Do you think that you might have a better plan if you went out and got that kind of expertise? You know, and a question asked honestly, you know, without being very forceful, may also be received very well. So generally speaking, you know, what those two techniques have in common is that they're not upfront and in your face. You know, in The Art of War by Sun Tzu, one of the famous books, he talks about having a frontal strategy, a flanking strategy, or a fragmentation strategy. So generally speaking, a frontal attack on somebody who is sensitive, which they will interpret as attack, even if you're just offering it as a suggestion, doesn't work nearly as well as a flanking strategy or a fragmentation strategy. So being indirect, asking questions, making it about you are all ways in which they might be a lot more appreciative of and open to any sort of advice and counsel that you give them. Hopefully that was helpful. Stephanie, any comments or another question, please?
I just would like to give a little testimonial. I've really learned over the years, over time, I should say, that you know, accepting feedback and being open and coachable is a choice. And it's interesting, you know, I was chatting with John last week about some different characteristics of top flight leaders. And one of the things that's on his list is that top flight leaders can convert conflict and resistance and setbacks and failures into positive energy. They can transform the bad into the good, right? Our strengths and opportunities and that kind of thing. And I think that that's something that has helped me really be more open and really, what's the word I'm looking for? Accepting, almost like, you know, go ahead, you know, give it to me, bring it, as the kids say, bring it, you know, that's what I'm trying to say, bring it, because it's helped me so much to get from A to Z, right?
Amen. Well said. Well said. And sometimes, by the way, we're in a bring it on mode, and sometimes maybe not so much. So,
not so much.
so reading, you know, having social awareness, which is one of the four cornerstones of emotional intelligence. Having social awareness is really determining, you know, whether or not somebody's open to that right now is a really good skill. And having self-management, you know, about knowing, or self-awareness and self-management, knowing where you are right now in your attitude and understanding how to shift your energy to something more positive, coupled with that social awareness, can really help in the fourth of the four cornerstones of emotional intelligence, and that is relationship management. And that's kind of what we've been talking about here in, you know, how do we manage the relationship with somebody and offer good suggestions in a way that it's not only accepted but also appreciated. Next question, Stephanie.
I am thinking about franchising. Any advice for me?
Yeah, lots of advice. And I know that Stephanie's going to chime in on this one too, because she has real experience with franchising. And I've worked with several different companies, two current clients that are in the process of developing or going after their franchise opportunity. So I have a lot of experience there. So I'll give you just a couple of pieces of advice, and then we'll let Stephanie offer a piece of advice of all. Number one is pay attention to the legal options with that, because you know, there are very specific laws when it comes to franchising your business and creating a franchise disclosure document, on the federal level and in many cases on the state level as well. So you really do have to pay attention to those laws. We've got one person in our community that even hooked up with a law firm that I think led them astray. And they went forward to try to sell franchise opportunities, in a state that required its state registration before they were legally authorized to do so, and it's caused them a lot of pain and heartache. And it may cause them to go to the point to where they're not eligible for or not ever able to sell franchises in that state because they started trying to do it before they were legally authorized to be able to do that. So there are a lot of legalities around franchising, and it really pays you to have a great franchise attorney on your team that can help you walk that path. Second thing I would suggest is that you make sure that you have a business model that is scalable. You do not want to, under any circumstances, try to franchise a business model that doesn't work, because you're only going to ask yourself, really invite a whole bunch of more problems. Because instead of trying to get one business model to work, which is yours, now you're trying to get 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 business models to work at the same time, and it's just not going to work. So make sure that you have a business model that does work and that it's profitable enough to where it can be franchised before you go down the road of franchising. And when you do that, make sure that you have the appropriate legal support in order to decide whether or not you want to do a franchise, as opposed to your other expansion options. And you can avoid a lot of challenges when you do that. Stephanie, I know you've got a lot to say about this one, so your turn.
Well, you said something very important in make sure that your business model will sustain the franchising. One of the things that I will again give testimonial to Paul about is that when I was doing my franchise, had I paid attention to the spreadsheets and to the numbers, paid attention to the ROI for my investors, I would have saved 5 figures of, well, almost 6 figures of my own money, as well as all of my investors' money as well. So I think that it's very important to recognize that numbers are our friends. Numbers are our friend. I keep saying that more for myself than you guys, just so you know. The other thing to remember, to recognize, is that every state has their own laws as far as franchising goes, and what that means. So you've got to be extremely careful about what you say and what you don't say as well when you're trying to franchise until you're legal. So just make sure that you check out your state. Another thing is that franchising is such a cool thing. Licensing might be a better option for you, so make sure that you investigate the differentiations between licensing and franchising to see which might fit your business model best. And my final, as Paul says, I can keep going, but one of the final things I just want to say is that franchising and licensing are such a cool opportunity, and there's some really amazing opportunities for you in your business if that's the path that you choose to go down. The only thing to remember is that, as Paul said, it's not just your business anymore. Now you've got all these, your branches and your franchisees, and some states are even going one step further and saying that your franchisees are almost your employee, which is having all kinds of good and not so good ramifications all over the place. So just recognize that when you're franchising, the buck stops here, so to speak. It's you're responsible, as far as that goes, for the providing an opportunity for success. And I've seen a lot of franchisors create models and just, okay, I'm going to franchise this business and throw it out there without any regard for the amount of effort and time and the lives that they are affecting. So that's just my final advice, is that it's a really cool thing, but you've got people that are depending on you for their success as well. So
awesome. I really appreciate that too. Yeah, yeah, and you'll find people who are your Z's, your franchisees, that have put their life's savings into this particular business. So that's a little different than having an employee who can go find a different job if things don't work out. When you're playing with somebody's when you're playing with somebody's retirement, and then that's quite different. I have a big sense of responsibility to all of my clients. I tell you, there's nothing quite like getting check number 1 from a client, and you realize that you're the very first person that they've reached out to and hired to help them design their business opportunity and go forward. I really have a sense of responsibility about that. And if you decide to do the franchise route, I encourage you to have a sense of responsibility for your franchisees as well. Stephanie, we got just a couple of minutes before the top of the hour and time for one more question or discussion topic, I believe. Do we have any more?
There's been a lot of questions about crowdfunding, so let's use this one. Should I move forward with crowdfunding, or should I raise capital in some other way?
It's a great question. I encourage you to listen to our crowdfunding office hours that we did nearly a year ago, and which we're undoubtedly going to update here in the next 60 days or so, because things have changed. So generally speaking, crowdfunding has 3 different flavors. There's donation-based crowdfunding, rewards-based crowdfunding, or equity-based crowdfunding. With donations-based crowdfunding, it means that we're just putting up a website and saying, hey, I have a charitable cause, please give me money, with no expectation of reward on the part of the person who is giving you the money. It's just a donation. We see this a lot with somebody that's had a nasty illness or had an accident, and somebody just puts up a quick site at GoFundMe and and raises money in a charitable kind of way. The second one is reward-based crowdfunding, and that is really, we're pre-selling things. So we are saying that we think we're coming out with a book. Please buy the book in advance, and that will fund the development of the book. Or we've got some other way that, if depending upon what level of contribution that you make, depends upon the level of reward that you get back in return for that contribution. So, if you give us $500, you'll get my undying gratitude, and an hour's worth of coaching. Or if you give us $5,000, you'll get our undying gratitude, a free t-shirt, a coffee mug, a baseball hat, and I'll come out to your place and deliver a full day's worth of coaching for you. You're raising money ahead of time, but there's a reward-based. In the last couple of years, there's been a new 506C offering announced by the federal government as Act 2 or Title 2 of the Jobs Act it is, that allows for accredited investors to do a crowdfunding routine. And they're soon to announce Title 3, which is for non-accredited investors to do equity-based crowdfunding. Now, we're not really sure about what the exact terms are going to be or the exact regulations for Title 3 crowdfunding, but we're pretty sure that's going to happen in the next 60 days or so. I think right now the target date is May the 16th. So that's going to open up the world a tremendous amount. So generally speaking, if you've got a really good network, if you're one of those gregarious people that, you've got 10 or 20 people or even 100 people who know who you are, who like you because you've been, president of the Chamber of Commerce, or you've been, in your local Rotary Club for the last 20 years, or you're a member of a mega church that has 3,000 people that get together every Sunday, and you're known to those people. If you've got an extremely large network, you may be able, it may be that at some level of public offering, either donations-based crowdfunding or rewards-based crowdfunding or equity-based crowdfunding may be the perfect thing for you. If you're not really well known, if you don't have a big network, then you may not be as successful with crowdfunding as other people who are gregarious and already have a huge network of potential investors out there for them. So, you know, and the other thing, the last piece of advice I give you here is make sure that you understand the laws, because, you know, equity-based crowdfunding comes with, you know, a pretty rigid set of guidelines and laws that you have to make sure that you follow. So work with, you know, a consultant or a coach like us, you know, and we'd love to have a conversation with you offline about that, to talk to you about what we know about crowdfunding, which is considerable. And before you go to do anything, because we don't want you to get in trouble. Here's an example of a type of trouble that somebody got into, is that they were selling a membership in a beer club. And a membership in a beer club was going to give them free pints of beer, you know, for a guy who wanted to open up a microbrewery in a bar. They were going to give him free pints of beer and the opportunity to share a little bit in the profits of the business. They didn't really realize what they were doing, but they were doing equity-based crowdfunding instead of reward-based crowdfunding. Anytime it switches to somehow allowing the person who participates to somehow gain some benefit of any kind based upon the overall performance of the business, then it turns out to be an equity-based investment instead of a rewards-based crowdfunding, and you can really get in trouble. That's just a little small example of how, if you don't structure the deal just exactly right, that you can get into serious problem with the Securities and Exchange Commission just because you didn't, you know, pay attention to what was going on. You didn't work with a consultant. You didn't work with a securities attorney to form your crowdfunding offering. Hopefully that's been of value to you, and the other comments and questions were of value to you today as we bring our live group coaching to an end. I want to thank Stephanie for being my right-hand person for her contributions today and her contributions also. And I want to thank each and every one of you who showed up live to our broadcast, and either on the telephone or via, you know, GoToWebinar. And until we meet again, which I hopefully will be next week on March the 28th, this is Paul, Hoyt, and Stephanie wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.